Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We get to spend another hour together. So we'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to join. I see the number of participants is going up, so we'll just wait around a few minutes. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining in. How are you feeling, Kate?
Great, thanks.
It's lovely to
It's nice and sunny here, so thank you.
That always boosts morale, huh? It's always good. Perfect. So I see the number of participants is slowly going up. So maybe we can give everyone just an extra minute or so, and then we can get started. That way we get the full hour. We'll just wait another minute here and then we can get started. Hello. Oh, our Q&A section is already getting some love. Hello, Ekaterina. Wonderful. Hello, Liliana. Nice to see you. Great. So, Kate, I think we'll try to keep everyone honest on time so we can go ahead and get started for the people that joined us.
Sounds good. So should I go to the next slide then? Is that what you're...
Exactly. Go for it. Perfect. So maybe a quick introduction, the two faces that will be on your screen today. So as always, I will be your moderator. So Lucia, part of the Alexa team here. And today we are very lucky to have Kate host this session. So Kate, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I've been translating for a little over 15 years now. I have done some freelance, but mostly I've worked on in-house translation teams. For the last 10 years, I've been with the Linguistic Services Department at Desjardins Group. And the reason I'm talking to you today is about, the technology side of the translation industry. And what really kickstarted my interest in that is that when I started at Desjardins, we were essentially set up as 4 mini teams that had almost no contact with each other except through our shared CAT tool. And since my mini team consisted of me, and also I had never worked for a financial institution before, I immediately saw the immense benefit of the CAT tool, which allowed me to essentially download the brains of my coworkers and predecessors that I had never met before. So when they were looking for people to help maintain and optimize the tool, I jumped on the opportunity because I wanted to help the rest of my team get as much value out of it as I did. And ever since then, I've been one of the team's CAT tool experts. And most recently, that involved being the lead for the team when we implemented our new request management system, CAT tool, and machine translation add-in. And that is what I'm going to be talking to you about today.
So you have quite a busy schedule, Kate. You wear a lot of hats. So
I do wear a lot of hats.
Pleasure to have you, and you're surely the expert. So we'll be listening carefully. So a quick presentation outline for today. We'll do a small recap of last week's session just to get everyone back in the swing of things. Then I'll let Kate take it over. So she'll talk about Desjardins, the linguistic services, how it was rolling out the MT. We're looking at key strategies to a successful rollout, some of the challenges that they experienced, as well as some of the results and the success stories. Then we'll finish it off with a quick summary and how MT saves our skin. I love that one. So we'll get started with a quick recap from last week. So for those of you that managed to make it live, last week we hosted a session with Betty Cohen. So we talked about machine translation and how it can be useful for translators in their day-to-day activities. Some of the key takeaways, so good MT will keep translator in the driving seat. So we looked at what we call the feedback loop and making sure that a good technology integrates seamlessly with translators, but also keeping them at the heart of the entire process. And we talked a lot about data and how to make sure that you train your machine translation and that you maintain it to get the best possible results. So the main nuggets there that we can share is to make sure that you have clean data and make sure that you maintain your translation memories and your turn bases. So Kate, I'll let you take it away. Before we get started, just a reminder for our participants, we are taking questions from the audience. So if you are an attendee today, you want us to dive a bit deeper into a topic, you have any questions for Kate, for myself, or if you are just curious about something that's related to the topic, don't be shy. We have a question and answer section. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to type in your questions and I'll be monitoring that section. So I'll bring it up to the attention of Kate today. So I'll let you get started.
Great, thanks. I highly encourage questions, by the way. So today I'm going to talk about how we've implemented machine translation in my department and hopefully give you some ideas on how to go about it in your own organization. This is probably mostly geared for in-house translation departments and language services providers, but I think that there will also be some takeaways that freelancers can adapt for themselves in rolling it out for their own situation. Now, before I go into the details about our implementation, I need to talk a bit about my organization and my team, because as every good translator knows, context is key. So if you live outside of Canada, because I think there are some people here from a little bit around the world, you have probably never heard of us. We are very Canada-based. If you're in Canada but outside of Quebec, you may know the name Desjardins from our small insurance offices that are scattered around the country. If you're in Quebec, you definitely know us very well, but you may or may not know that we are actually Canada's largest credit union, and I believe we're actually North America's largest credit union. We also offer a lot of other products and services than just banking, from credit cards to HR and payroll services for everyone from individuals to businesses of every size to major institutions. Now, all of these products and services means a lot of documentation that needs to be translated and a lot of employees. As you can see on the screen, we have about 55,000. That changes daily. And each and every one of those 55,000 people is a potential client of the Linguistic Services Department.
Quite a large audience and a lot of people to cater to.
Yes.
Maybe just a quick question for you, Kate. So you do treat a wide variety of projects ranging from anywhere from marketing material all the way to something that's much more specific to the financial market. Is everyone in your team using MT right now for all these projects?
Some people use it a lot, and well, most people use it a little, and some people use it a lot, and some people sort of are in the middle. I'm actually going to talk about this a bit later, but it's hard to say. But we're getting there. I think we're getting
okay.
All right. So my team is made up of 19 translators. We have 15 that translate from French to English and 4 from English to French. We also all edit, proofread, and we revise each other. We're supported by 2 terminologists, an entire stable of freelancers, as well as 2 translation agencies, also called language services providers. And we need all of this support because we have vastly more volume than we can handle in-house. You'll see this on the left-hand side of this graph. That is the number of words per year that we handle. So it's been increasing by an average of just over 5% a year for the last 5 years, and probably before that too. And based on the volume that we're doing right now, which is expected to hit about the 16 million word mark by the end of this year, we would need close to 60 translators to be able to keep up with all of the work, but we have 19.
Oh, I think it froze, Kate. Your internet is going on strike. So maybe to add a bit of color here and help explain this slide. So it's something that we've been seeing in the industry as well across the border. We've seen a high demand for translation, and it could be due to a number of things. So it could be because there's new content to be translated. We also communicate more as a society, so we have a lot more social media posts that are going out. We have a lot more pieces that need to be translated. So that's part of the reason why we see that increase. And it's not just specific to the bank, it's also across the industry, something that we're seeing. And it's part of the reason why a lot of people are turning to machine translation and other tools to assist, because there's not as much resources, there's not as many translators, but there is still a big increase and a big jump in the demand. Oh, Kate.
I don't know what happened. I lost my contact with the meeting.
No problem.
Oh, apparently other me is still sharing. So hold on, let me just.
No problem. I'll actually take this time to remind everyone, if you have any questions or if you want us to dive a bit deeper into any topic, just don't be shy to write out your question in the Q&A section.
I am not able to share because other me is sharing. So I wonder if someone on your technical side can kick out the other instance of me.
Yeah, sure. I see some of the team here on the IT side trying to solve the issue, so we'll be able to get back shortly.
Okay, let's try this again.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Okay, great. Let me just do one more thing here. All right. Sorry about that technical issue, everyone. Where was I?
That's okay. Kate, I don't know if you want to share the full screen or just the slide. Yeah, I think you're showing the next slide as well as your comments.
Oh, am I? Oh, I picked the wrong screen. Okay, stop share.
That's
it's hard to tell on the little window.
I know.
Okay, here. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay,
Yeah,
how's
no
that?
No problem. Perfect. All set.
Okay, great. I will carry on. Right, so we're expected to hit the 16 million word mark this year. So we would need close to 60 translators to be able to keep up with all of that work. We have 19. So for us, having CAT tools is absolutely essential so that we can, A, be consistent across the board with all of our different materials and translators, and B, handle ever increasing volumes without also adding to our staffing and outsourcing costs, because, by the way, we don't directly generate any profit for the organization. We're a free service for our employees, so we cost the organization money to do what we do. So we need to manage a budget pretty tightly in order to, I don't want to say stay under the radar, but not have people questioning why we're there.
And it's great that you mentioned it, Kate, because I think a lot of people are in a similar situation, especially with translation departments, for sure.
Yeah. For sure. So in July 2021, so about a year and a half ago now, we made the switch to MemoQ, and we are now using the Alexa AI plugin. That is the perspective that I'm going to be talking from, but I'm sure that many of the aspects that I'm talking about apply to all cat tool and machine translation combinations. So I think that the takeaways are relevant no matter what tools you're using, or at least I hope so. The steps that we've taken to roll out machine translation, is that going to switch? Yes, okay. So first of all, yes, it's important to mention that the idea of machine translation is very terrifying for a lot of translators, including me. But it's clearly the direction that the industry is going in. The technology is getting better and better every day. And from a business standpoint, it is becoming absolutely essential to implement. So the question becomes, how do you introduce it into your workflows without demoralizing your entire team? Our solution has been to take it pretty slow and easy, and sort of gradually implement it. We went live with our machine translation tool in January, and we're still not all the way through all of the steps that I'm going to talk about today. But the strategy seems to be working, and more people have been buying in, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So our first step was, of course, to have a small pilot group start using it in September. The results were very encouraging. Everyone was pleasantly surprised at the quality of the output, which was great because when we eventually went live with the entire team, their role switched from pilot to ambassador. Then when we did go live with the entire team in January of this year, we made it as an opt-in approach for everyone. So they were able to try out the machine translation on different types of requests at their own discretion to see what worked well for them and what didn't. But there's a couple of barriers with this step because it meant a few extra clicks each time they wanted to use it, because they would have to go into the settings to turn it on and then start using it. And then there's also the whole out of sight, out of mind problem where, I mean, we're busy people, we're doing request after request. We forget that there's this option that we can try out. And so people just didn't necessarily choose or remember to turn it on, even if the request would have been an ideal candidate for machine translation to help with. So because of that, over the summer, we did a big push to encourage people to use it more. So we showed users who wanted to set up their systems so that the machine translation would always be available in their translation results. And they wouldn't have to do the extra clicks each time. It would just always be available and show them options in their translation results. But that again was their choice to turn it on or not. And we also ran a training session in July that was mainly a forum for the ambassadors to talk about why they love the machine translation and the output, what they use it for, and give other users opportunities to ask questions and help put them at ease with the idea of it. Then step 4 was we created a specific workflow that pre-translates using machine translation for a very specific type of request that we get a lot of, that is very low stakes, that translators would then post-edit. So this gave everyone on the team, because nobody gets out of doing these jobs, the opportunity to try out machine translation without any of the previously mentioned barriers on something that we already don't prioritize in terms of effort and quality expectations. So it made it a sort of a great sandbox for people to play with it and see what the output was like.
Before we move on to the next steps, Kate, I'm just maybe gonna ask you a question from the audience here.
Yeah.
Katharina wanted to know if there were any types of translations where users were surprised that machine translation worked better than they expected.
Yeah, we do a lot of sort of governance documents, like our policies and procedures and stuff.
Okay.
And what do we call them? Policies, procedures, rules, and regulations and stuff. And those have been amazing with the machine translation. It works very nicely with that stuff, and people were quite impressed because there's also a lot of internal jargon with those kinds of documents. So, but other than, you know, our frustratingly long department names, it works really well for that.
That's it. That's great.
We have jokes in our organization about our department names sometimes. So
that's great, and it puts it into perspective for the attendees, where you could be surprised in different departments or in different types of tech. So it's really about keeping with step 1 and 2, just making sure that you have those champions, those ambassadors that can then help people in step even 2, 3, and beyond to facilitate implementation. One question that I had for you is how did you decide on the group for step 1? So what you call super users.
Yes, it was, we made it a sort of a mix of people who are super keen on new technologies and trying stuff out, and other people who are more skeptical about things, because we really wanted a diversity of voices and how it works. And I think that helps with encouraging skeptics on the main group of the team, because we all know who on our team is into new things and who is less interested in trying out stuff. So when people saw that, oh, so-and-so really likes it, well, that must mean it's okay. Whereas, you know, if this other person really likes it, they're like, yeah, but they like all the new things, you know. So it's I think important to have a mix of comfort levels to be on our pilot groups.
And that's a fantastic recommendation, and I can vouch. I've seen it happen with many other teams, where if you can convince the skeptics up front and turn them into true champions of the solution, then it makes the process so much easier, for sure. Yeah. I'll let you carry on. So far in my book, sure. You are an A+ student. This is a great plan.
Thank you. Thank you. I also just thought of another kind of document that was working really well with machine translation, which is a lot of our wealth management stuff. Okay. I guess because, you know, the basis for the corpus is financial, legal, securities stuff. So it's been really working really well for that. Okay, so step 5. You'll see it's a multi-step plan here. So this fall, in October, I think, we held a training session on post-editing and how it's different from regular revising of translations. Although I know that Betty said last week during her thing that she doesn't call it post-editing, she just calls it all revising, which I think is a pretty smart way to go about it. We also started a team-wide conversation about what we want to use machine translation for. Where we add value as human translators. So sort of a debate of when is good enough, when is machine translation excel, and when do we need to have as many human eyeballs on a text as possible. So that's ongoing, but the conversation has started. And our next step, which we're just getting to now, is to make machine translation suggestions appear by default in the translation results for everyone. We actually just surveyed the team in the last couple of weeks, and a solid majority of the team voted in favor of this move, which I was super happy about, because that means that people are interested in actually seeing the results that come up. So my hope with this step is that people because there are people who are still not using it, as far as we can tell, or not using it very often. So my hope is that now that they will always be seeing it in their results regardless, they'll start using it more and they'll see how good it can be. Yes, especially now that it's been trained more, which I'm also going to talk about in a moment. And our last step, which we're not at yet, and I don't know if we'll get to it or not, is potentially to add pre-translation with machine translation by default all the time. Based on the survey results, our team is definitely not ready for this step. We may never be, I don't know, but it's definitely something that we are considering. So yes, those are our main steps that we followed. So I can talk a little bit about the strategy. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say this is amazing, and thank you for being so transparent and giving us a look behind the curtain, if you will. One thing that I wanted to share with the audience is, and I'm sure you can vouch to this, Kate, there is no one size fits all approach, right? You really have to know your team, know what type of content you deal with, what type of eyeballs, like you said, are going to be on the different translations that you produce as a team. But again, there are some common threads, and there are some pretty standard recommendation that we can make market wide for everyone that is in the translation industry. So I hope you took away some of the little nuggets that can work for your team and help you roll out any type of technology, right? Because we're talking about machine translation, but it could be a new CAT tool, it could be a new CMS software, whatever it is. A lot of the principles around change management are valid here as well.
Yeah, I can tell you that due to various time and IT constraints, we did not take this approach when we rolled out our new CAT tool last year, and it was not as smooth sailing. So this is going much better than that did. Everything's fine now, but it was a rough start.
You got the two sides of the coin.
Yeah. Is that gonna? Okay, there we go. So the key strategies that we've been using, as I have said, training the AI system. Jason and Betty have both talked about this in the previous sessions. We sent an initial batch in December of our last 3 years of translations just before we went live. And we've been sending documents every quarter since then. And when I say send documents, I'm not emailing them. We have security concerns. It's a very secure method that we're using, just so everyone knows. Since I do work for a financial institution, I think I should be clear about that. Also, we don't deal with confidential information generally in this, in my team. Anyway, I'm getting off track. And yes, the training really works. I can see it with my own eyes. An example of this is the word client versus customer. At Desjardins, we almost never use the word customer to refer to the people who use our services. But at the start, before we were able to train the machine, it almost always had customer in the output. But now I only ever see client most of the time, I think. So that's, it's neat to notice little things like that used to be sort of irritants for everyone. And now nobody notices anymore because they don't exist. The other thing is obviously take it slow, let people warm up to the idea. It's kind of like when you go to the lake and you take your time gradually going bit by bit into the water to let your body acclimate to the temperature of the water. It's the same kind of idea. Just take it a bit at a time. Having cheerleaders is important for this too, so that they can talk about the great results that they're getting, and that will make people curious and want to see for themselves, because everyone has this idea about how terrible machine translation is. But if you have people talking about how good it is, then they're going to want to see that for themselves, and then they'll start using it more and more. A real concern for our team is that we're going to be sacrificing quality for quantity. And it's really important to show them that they can have both. But that's it's a slow process and it's a relearning process. It is not an overnight change of opinion. So, you know, take it gently with everyone. I think the most important one for us has been to have the team participate in deciding what machine translation should and should not be used for. This is their professional reputation that's on the line. You know, if someone gets a bad translation out in our company, they're not going to say, oh, the machine did this badly. They're going to say, oh, the linguistic services department did this badly. So the translators who are behind that need to have input into what goes out or what goes into the machine translation and what doesn't. We have a working group set up now to talk about how to prioritize the requests that we receive based on our budget and capacity constraints. It seems like a very complicated thing that they're working on, and I think that they're very brave for doing it. And it will hopefully help people take ownership of the tool as well, knowing that they're the ones who decided how it should be used, and understanding the context of why we even need to use it, because that's not always obvious to a translator if it's just, you know, sort of imposed on them, and they then have to use it and they don't necessarily understand the, you know, as you said before, the behind the curtains part of it. The last strategy that we've been using is to have fun with it and encourage people to share some of the hits and misses, and particularly the misses, just because they can be pretty funny. And over time, we've been seeing fewer and fewer of them. So that's been pretty cool. But I also, just for fun, wanted to show some of the more interesting ones that we've seen over the last year.
I love your key strategies, Kate, and it's certainly something that can be applied to translation departments, to freelancers, to people just wanting to implement new technologies. One question that I asked for you was around how to get the team involved, and what made you decide to take that approach? Because a lot of translation teams that I work with kind of come up with a plan, they structure it, present it to the team, and roll it out. So why did you decide to get the team involved and make sure that everyone had a voice in the process and was able to impact the final decision?
Because people will buy in when they feel they have a choice. That's the very short version of it. Yeah, that's basically it. If people feel like it's being imposed on them, they're not going to be interested. But if they feel like they get to participate in the choices, I mean, this rollout plan, that was like a small group of senior people who made these choices, but, you know, getting the team involved and figuring out what to use it for, that's for us, it's very important for the entire team to participate in that decision, because they're the professionals, right? They're the ones who know what's working and what's not. My manager will tell everyone that she's not a translator, and she's very happy not to be a translator. She's very good at managing. But she trusts us to know from a translator perspective what is good and what is not. So that's part of our team culture, I guess. It's very important for us.
And thank you for sharing. I think it will be if you get anything out of this series, it's just this takeaway. Like you said, people will be more inclined to do something if they're not forced into it. So for sure. Yeah. Great. I'm just going to use this again as a reminder. If you have any questions for Kate, you have the expert in implementation here, so don't be shy. Again, you can use our Q&A to ask anything. Something that I missed before, Kate, a question from Nina that was wondering if you also use FlowFit with MemoQ. You do?
Yes, that is our request management tool.
So you are the triple thread. You have Alexa, FlowFit, and MemoQ. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Should I carry on?
Sure. Yeah. Let's look at some of the hits and misses.
Yeah. So this one. Oops. Oh yeah, okay, that's fine. Revenu Québec, Quebec's taxation agency. It's pretty obvious why it didn't get it. It just didn't understand that this is an organization name. But I also thought it was kind of amazing that it saw this and assumed that the preposition was missing from the source text and added its own to make a sentence out of it. I think that's pretty intelligent, actually, in the artificial intelligence. This one is the name of one of our credit unions in our federation. And I love the new name that the machine came up with for it. And in case you're curious, because I was, Tête à la Baleine is a village in the far east of Quebec, looking across the Gulf of St. Lawrence towards Newfoundland. Population 119 as of the last census. And it has its own credit union. This next one I thought was absolutely genius. It did not understand the name Tesla. It assumed that it meant tu es là, which is the French for you are here, which it just blew my mind when I figured out what was going on here. It took a minute, but it was absolutely fascinating. And then for counterbalance, I'm not going to expect everyone to read this, but this is just a really nice example of a quality machine translation that I wanted to share as well. It's from an article talking about a recent road safety survey that we did because we do auto insurance. And it's clear, it's understandable. It's maybe a tiny bit overwritten in English because it takes all of the French text. But there's no mistakes, there's no mistranslations. It could go out as is, and that's fine.
That's quite a big hit. Kate, a question from Jacqueline here in the audience is regarding the hits and misses. She wanted to know if there are any types of persistent errors that are a bit more difficult to train out and become known preferences in machine translation.
Yep, there's the well-known problem with AI being sexist. We use gender-neutral language at Desjardins, and that's been problematic. Interestingly, it used to be consistently using he when it translated into English because French tends to have masculine-leaning pronouns. But now we get sort of a mix of everything. So sometimes it will be talking about the same person and use he, she, and they in 3 different segments. So people are really having to keep an eye on that. But that's also expected from AI translation.
I think we're changing also what can be expected of machine translation. Jason touched a bit on this in her first session around the sexism and the gender bias that we're seeing with machine translation. And there's quite a bit of effort being done to counterbalance that, and especially with the release of adaptive translation that Alexa is rolling out in a couple of weeks now. I think it will solve some of the issues, but you're absolutely right. A lot of institutions, if I look at, for example, National Bank, Desjardins are choosing non-gendered language. And so it has to be at the center of the conversation around MT for sure.
Yeah. The other thing that has been difficult to train so far that we found is quotation marks and apostrophes, because we have chosen in our separate style guidelines in French to always use curly quotes and apostrophes, or I guess not quotes very often because French doesn't use quotation marks, and straight ones in English. And we sort of, it used to be consistently curly in English, and now it's sort of, again, a mix. So I guess it's learning. I had someone actually write me this morning to say, hey, look, it used straight quotes today. Yay, we're getting there. So yeah, those are the 2 of the things that popped to mind right away about things that are harder to train out, but we're definitely making progress. It's been really fascinating to watch it evolve, actually.
That's I love that you get to share your experience. If I can just add maybe another question from Judy here that I think will resonate with a lot of the people in the audience today is how do you see MT working for you, where you have such a variety of clients and such a variety of different texts?
It works well. It doesn't seem to be bothered by the variety. No more than we do as humans, I guess. Like, I know I always have problems switching between different kinds of insurance because they use different terminology in the life and health insurance versus, what do they call that? P&C insurance. They'll use the same term in French, but two different terms in English for the same thing. And I always find that really problematic. So I don't think it's any worse for the machine or better. I don't know if that really answered the question or not, but.
It really puts it into perspective that it's similar to us as human beings or as translators in front of a variety of text, right? So the experience is a bit of a parallel there for sure. Yeah.
That's actually a good segue into my next thing, which is our challenges that we've been having. For our challenges, we have a couple of big ones other than the ones that I just talked about with the training. A couple from the translator perspective and a couple that are more managerial level ones. So for the translators, terminology has been a real issue for us. We have a pretty rich terminology database, and I might add some pretty unique terminology, but we haven't been able to include it in the training for the AI yet because it requires a one-to-one match of terms. And so many of our terms have synonyms depending on the context, like I just mentioned about our insurance products, and also just our company name. In French, it could be Desjardins, le mouvement Desjardins, le mouvement des caisses Desjardins, or just le mouvement. And in English, it's Desjardins or Desjardins Group. So that's 4-2. And so we need to sit down and take a look at each of our terms and decide what we want the machine to use in particular contexts in a way that's appropriate for both language directions. And we just haven't been able to prioritize that yet because, as you may remember, we are doing 16 million words a year with 19 translators, and our two terminologists can barely keep up with all of the questions that we have as it is. But in the meantime, I'm hoping that as we send more translations to train the AI, it will see how we use the terms and start adjusting as well. So we don't have to do, I would like us to get around to doing the term-based equivalencies, but I think that the training will also help. And the other issue is the quality of the source texts that we get. Our texts come from all over the organization. Very few of our clients were hired for their writing skills. They have other skills that are super valuable to the organization, but they're just not writers, and that's okay. Often they're also not writing in their first language, and that is never helpful for people. But it means that what the machine is working with is not always perfect. And as Jason and Betty both talked about, it's important to have clean texts to work with. And so we get imperfect translations as a result. One really striking example of this is a coworker the other day had a text where the author had written P-E-U when they should have written P-E-U-T. I'm assuming most of the people on this training know some French. So there's a little versus can. It was really clear to the translator from the context that it was just a typo, but the machine did not get that, and it completely changed the meaning of the output to be the exact opposite of what was meant. I wish we had the capacity to edit everything before it goes to translation, or even after translation, but before it goes to help train the machine. But that's just not realistic for us. There's just too much. In terms of management things, a big thing is that there's just not really any data out there to help us reassess our budget and productivity goals. So we're not sure how to figure out how fast we should be going now that we have machine translation, under what circumstances. Do we need to set productivity levels for quality assurance of a machine translation versus a human translation to be the same, or should they be different speeds? It sort of feels like we're trying to reinvent the wheel. So although if anyone out there watching this has tips or resources, please feel free to send them to me. My email address is on the last slide of this presentation. And then also, it's impossible for us to know for sure who's using machine translation and how much. So it's hard to know where we can focus our training and encouragement and development efforts. So we have to rely on translators telling us if they're using it or not, which is fine, but people notoriously either underestimate or overestimate how much of something they're doing. However, we can look at the productivity stats, which can give us a pretty good guess about who is using it.
I think that's a great segue into our next chapter in this presentation. Before we move along, Kate, if you don't mind, I know Gary joined the call. Gary, who's our CEO here at Alexa, and he had a few remarks or comments rather on some of the challenges and some of the questions, if time permits. Oh, there you are. Hi, Gary.
Hello, and Kate, I've been taking notes notoriously here. It's thank you for sharing these, and I must say, obviously, it's a luxury to have a client that is also very sophisticated in the approach in this, and it is certainly a bit unusual because we often work with clients that need a lot more hand-holding, and it's great to see how you dissected it, and extremely interesting. I had a couple points, and on one I'll actually ask Kate as well. So first, just one additional piece on the question that Judy had around working with different clients, and this is actually a very valid point because for large organizations, and Desjardins included, you can have vastly different needs from one big department to the other. And if you're a translation agency, similarly, your clients could have a huge spectrum and sometimes inconsistent terminology with one another. So this is where you'd want the ability to set up specific project functionality, sometimes with specific terminology to that client that isn't applied across the board, and really to have those pre-set up. So every time something comes up for that client, you already have this workflow set up. But also something, and it's in line with what I was saying last time we did this, where you'd ask your provider to say, how can you help us do this? How can you talk us through how we can set this up effectively? Because once you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature. But regardless, even if it is a smaller translation department, there's still needs that can be different from one department to the other. And then the other question, and this I'll actually ask Kate to see if there's anything she would like to add as well. But Lena asked if what is a decentralized model okay, like getting people to use MT, such as Microsoft Translate feature, non-translation specialists. So this is something that I always sort of caution clients with, especially when these are non-bilingual people, because then they'll get a lot of it at face value, which may also mean mistranslations. So in this case, you'd want my recommendation is that the output coming from the machine is controlled or trained by the translation department. So in the case of Kate and team, for example, if the broader team at Desjardins used it, it would be with the training that had benefited for some time from the translation group versus go use Microsoft that doesn't have any background on the respective organizations you're working with or departments, etc. And as a result, increases the chances for error. This is leaving aside any benefits from out of the box, let's say French Canadian, whether Microsoft or any other tools out there are good enough for those purposes. but your input of your respective organizations will make it better by the day. So to get the non-professional users to benefit from the tool that you're using, but without giving them the ability to give feedback to the tool, because what you don't want is them polluting the tool with sort of non-professional feedback, let's say. Or if, to the extent they wanted to give the feedback, they're sending it via the translation department, not just directly into the tool. So just some tips on that front that we've seen with a variety of clients, and sort of caveats that could hopefully help you with your respective workflows.
I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, Gary, because I wanted to talk a bit about that too. And I just couldn't find a good place in this presentation to discuss it, because we're also in the process of starting to roll that out for Desjardins, to have a machine translation tool available so that people will stop using free services online to translate potentially confidential things or like strategically important things, because we do have a lot of teams that have some French only speaking people and some English only speaking people, and they don't have any other way to communicate. So we want to roll out machine translation for the entire company that has been trained to speak Desjardins using our translations. So that's something that we are working on. We're not quite there yet, because, you know, IT security and IT in general, things need to be set up and ready to go before we can launch it, of course. So yeah, we're hopeful that that's going to be really helpful for the entire company.
That's great, Kate. I think we can dive into the next portion. Everyone is dying to see some of the numbers. What are the results, and then get into the stats.
Yes. So results. Overall, our team productivity has jumped by 7.7% just in Q3, ever since we had the big push over the summer to encourage people to start using it more, using machine translation more. Over the course of the year, it's gone up by 12.25%, which is a mix of using MemoQ in our translation memories and the machine translation. We don't have any solid numbers for costs yet, but I put a little down arrow next to it because things are looking very good in terms of our costs. So I know numbers are great, but anecdotes are better. So I also have some real success stories where one of them is mine. I had an enormous request for proposals this summer that was very full of IT jargon. It was very full of jargon for the industry that it was meant for. It was supposed to take, I think our request management system estimated 12 full days to do it. I shaved off an entire 3 days from that, which is about a 25% time savings. I did that math myself, by the way. I'm very proud, since I am a word person, not a numbers person. But we also, a couple of times now, have had a really important strategic document come in where they finalized the text, and then we had 2 days to translate it before they had to present it to the board of directors. And our translator managed to plow through almost 7,000 words in double our normal productivity rate. And she only had to put in half an hour of overtime. And it just astounds me that she managed this. Also, when I asked her for more details about this, she pointed out that part of that time was devoted to formatting the text in the PowerPoint afterwards. So it wasn't even actual core translation time that was 12 hours. That was also partially fiddling with fonts. So
I'm sure.
And my very favorite one, oh, sorry.
And I was going to say, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience saying, oh, I wish I had that when I had this emergency project or this very tight
In
deadline.
hindsight, some of the things we could have used it for over the last couple of years, like pandemic stuff, would have been amazing with machine translation. Holy smokes. Yeah, my favorite machine translation saving us is that we have a specialized team that gets a huge amount of volume with really tight turnarounds. Like we're talking 1,500 words to 2,000 words. They have to deliver within, 3 or 4 hours, and it has to be really good quality. It's going on our website. It's supposed to be influential information that people are going to be reading to make decisions. The lead translator on that team, who was already one of our fastest translators, has increased her productivity by a whopping 52%. And it blows my mind every time I see that number.
I feel like you could do
I don't know
mic
how
drop.
she does it.
At this point, you could just
Right.
drop the mic and say, that's it.
Yeah, she can go home now. It's fine.
No, but thank you so much. Like you said, these stories speak volume, and I'm sure will resonate with a lot of people in our audience. It's something that we communicate as much as we can, but there's nothing like sharing your lived experiences for sure.
So some takeaways that I hope that viewers will get from this is, first of all, train your AI early and often. Take the time to set up your one-to-one term equivalencies. You will not regret it. Send documents in batches regularly if you can, or at least if you're using the kind where you can make corrections and it will learn from the corrections. Make as many as you can from the very start so that it learns. Be compassionate with your translators. This is a very nerve-wracking change. The future is very unclear. Nobody knows how long their jobs are going to last. The bottom line should not be the be-all and end-all of this transition. We're in a labor shortage right now. If you want your staff to stay and stay happy, engage them in the process. Don't impose it on them. And the other part of that is to take it slow. Jumping in with both feet from the get-go, I think, is a recipe for disaster. It will cause translators to use untrained machine translation all the time, right from the start, and that will only lead to irritation and mistrust of the tool. If they're able to ease into it, they'll see it improving over time. They'll see it learning. They'll also learn what to look for, and overall quality will improve on both sides. So yeah, that's about it.
I would like to add a fourth bullet there and say, make sure you have a Kate on your team, because I think the work that you do and the philosophy that you have is a big part contributing to the success of all of this.
I am available for cloning.
Are you sure you want to put that out there?
No, I really don't.
And Lucia, if I may, Kate, that was really, really insightful, and we really appreciate it. One thing that really resonates with me in all the scenarios we've seen before as well is that not all people are made the same. So you can't impose this and expect them to all. So somebody improved by 52% doesn't mean the rest of the team will, or not at the same time frame. And whether it's affinity to technology, whether it's how they work, people have different strengths, etc. So it's really important to have sort of expectations of the tool that are incremental. So year 1 versus year 2, year 3. There's a lot of research out there that says implementation of technology can take up to 3 years to actually have full adaptability, even with the really good project management around it and so on. So those are really important things to consider, and also not to be too tough on yourselves. But also a reason to think that starting the journey early, sooner rather than later, is important, because knowing that it takes some time versus saying, it's okay, we can delay to next year because we'll have lots of time, and then by end of the year it'll be perfect, because that process is lengthy, regardless when you start.
That's a great closing remarks, Gary. Thank you, as always, for your comments. So we are getting together again next week. So next week, we'll have the pleasure of having Joe join us for a session looking at hands-on application of AI. it is the last session of the course, so I hope you all can make it live. It's always a pleasure getting together with people in the industry. Again, a big thank you, Kate. It was lovely to hear from you. It was great to hear some of the challenges, some of the successes. I think it will resonate with a lot of the people here and make sure that they are kinder in the way they implement technology, but also get the best results possible. I'm glad you included this last slide. So if you want to reach out to Kate, she has very kindly given her email address. So if you have any questions for her or just want to get in touch, you can do so using her email. Thanks again for
also.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I forgot.
Okay.
So thanks again, everyone, for joining in. It was great to spend the hour with you, and I look forward to seeing you next week for our last session. Thanks a lot.
Lucia.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.